At least 10 people are dead and dozens hurt in Russia after an explosion rocked the subway station in St. Petersburg.
Russian officials are currently investigating the blast as a terror attack. Russian President Vladimir Putin, who was in St. Petersburg at the time, expressed condolences for the victims and said law enforcement is working to figure out the exact cause.
On the phone with us now, CBS News senior national security analyst and former Homeland Security advisor to President George W. Bush, Fran Townsend. Fran, what can you tell us? What are you hearing from your sources about what exactly is happening right now?
Well, the first thing investigators are looking for is a claim of responsibility to understand what the motive behind the attack is. Of course, you know, the conduct of the attack feels very much like the London bombing years ago on the London Tube. The catastrophic nature of the bombing with shrapnel suggests that this was a pretty organized effort intended to maximize fatalities and targeting the government.
So who would most likely be the suspects in this incident?
Well, the Russian government is saying that they're looking at this as a terrorism investigation. The Russians have been fighting the Chechens, an Islamic extremist group inside their territory, for some time. The real question is if this is terrorist-inspired, did they have outside help from ISIS or Al-Qaeda, or was it purely an internal domestic terror group like the Chechens?
Fran, you are very familiar with Russia, and you are also very familiar with Russian President Vladimir Putin. It's been posited that in the past, his heavy-handed tactics have only incensed those people that might seek to strike at Russia. What are you expecting his response will be in the wake of this?
Well, I mean, I think based on what we've seen in the past, there was the theater attack where there was massive casualties. There will be we ought to expect a very sort of hard and strong response out of Putin. I will tell you, you know, put aside for a second Putin's tactics, there is nothing to justify this sort of an outrageous and brutal attack against a civilian population.
Indeed. And just tell me what you know about the area or the target, the type of target, using mass transit as a target.
You know, regrettably, over the last decade, we've seen groups from Al-Qaeda and ISIS, whether it's in Spain or London or aviation assets here in the United States. This is a favorite target because it's easily accessible to them, and it does produce mass casualties, and it instills the sort of fear in people who are trying to get to work. It really sort of paralyzes a society, and that's exactly what the bad guys are after.
And Fran, I guess the question is going to be, what happens next? I mean, one of the things that we've been talking about with our reporters on the ground is how Russian people feel specifically about those folks within their own country who would seek to attack them, how they feel going forward about this and where the investigation will lead.
You know, typically, whether it's Russia or it's the United Kingdom, as we regrettably saw recently, it sort of emboldens a population to support the government and support the government's response. And so in an odd way, domestically, this may sort of bolster Putin. Remember, he's just suffered public protests on a very large scale. This is the sort of event that tends to galvanize a population in support of their government. And so, oddly enough, the timing may be helpful to Putin.
All right, Fran Townsend, always good to have you for your analysis, Fran. We thank you.
Thanks, Vlad.